On a crisp autumn morning in Manchester, the municipal courthouse buzzed with its usual routine. Elizabeth Hartwell, a distinguished philosopher with years of academic experience, stood quietly in the crowded courtroom. Her tailored gray suit, pressed perfectly, contrasted sharply with the worn wooden benches and faded walls of the aging building. Judge William Pierce, a seasoned magistrate in his mid-50s, looked down from his elevated bench with a stern expression. His graying hair and rectangular glasses gave him an air of academic authority, though his eyes suggested a man who had seen countless cases pass through his courtroom. Elizabeth had been pulled over 3 weeks earlier for an apparently minor traffic violation, an improper lane change that seemed trivial to her. She had been driving home from a late-night academic conference, her mind still processing the complex philosophical discussions she had just experienced. The police officer who stopped her had been polite but firm. He noted her slight hesitation during the lane change and issued a citation. Elizabeth, always composed, had accepted the ticket without argument, knowing that challenging every small incident would only drain her energy. Now standing in the courtroom, she felt the weight of institutional judgment. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, making the space feel cold and impersonal. Around her, other defendants shuffled nervously, their eyes downcast, but Elizabeth remained calm, her posture straight and dignified. Judge Pierce reviewed the documentation, his fingers moving methodically across the papers. He seemed disconnected, treating the proceedings as just another routine matter in his long career. He didn't look up at Elizabeth, didn't see the depth of character behind the simple traffic violation. "Ms. Hartwell," he announced in a clear, authoritative voice, "I find you guilty of improper lane change. The fine will be $250, payable within 30 days. The gavel fell with a sharp crack, echoing through the courtroom. Most would have seen this as a simple legal transaction, a minor infraction resulting in a standard penalty. But for Elizabeth, it represented something more profound. Throughout her academic career, she had studied and written extensively about systemic biases, about how small moments of judgment could reveal deeper societal inequalities. Here she was, experiencing precisely the kind of interaction she had analyzed in her scholarly work. Her research focused on how institutions, legal, educational, social, often failed to see individuals beyond their immediate, surface-level interactions. This traffic court was a perfect microcosm of those broader systemic challenges she had dedicated her life to understanding. As she prepared to pay the fine, Elizabeth's mind was already processing the experience. She wasn't angry or resentful. Instead, she saw this as another data point in her ongoing research about human interaction, institutional behavior, and unconscious bias. The courtroom continued its mechanical rhythm. Defendants came and went, paperwork was filed, fines were issued, but something significant had just occurred, a moment that would soon challenge both Elizabeth and Judge Pierce in ways neither could currently imagine. When Elizabeth stepped outside the courthouse, the autumn wind brushed against her face. Manchester's gray sky seemed to mirror the bureaucratic environment she had just experienced. But beneath her calm exterior, her brilliant mind was already analyzing, understanding, and preparing to transform this seemingly mundane interaction into something meaningful. Little did Judge Pierce know that the woman he had just fined was not just another defendant, but a renowned philosopher whose work would soon challenge his entire understanding of justice, perception, and human interaction. The fine was paid. The legal process was complete. But this was far from the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of a profound journey of mutual understanding, challenging assumptions, and breaking down invisible barriers that separate people. As Elizabeth walked to her car, she smiled slightly, not out of amusement, but with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that true change happens through understanding, patience, and an unwavering commitment to intellectual and social growth. The city moved around her, unaware that a small moment in a municipal courthouse would soon become a catalyst for a remarkable transformation. A week after the courtroom encounter, Judge William Pierce sat in his modest home office, surrounded by legal journals and academic publications. The room felt quiet, with soft afternoon light filtering through heavy curtains, illuminating stacks of research materials. His weekend was dedicated to preparing lecture notes for his upcoming law seminar at the local university. Typically, he would spend hours reviewing traditional legal texts and contemporary judicial case studies. But today, something felt different. As he scrolled through an online academic database, a research paper caught his attention. The title was complex yet intriguing: Systemic Bias in Institutional Decision-Making, a Philosophical Perspective. Curious, he clicked to read the full article. The author's name made him pause. Elizabeth Hartwell, the same woman he had fined in court just days earlier. His initial reaction was surprise. Then, as he began reading, surprise transformed into genuine fascination. The paper was meticulously researched, offering profound insights into how societal institutions perpetuate unconscious biases through seemingly neutral procedures. Elizabeth's writing was clear, powerful, and intellectually rigorous. She dissected complex social dynamics with surgical precision, using real-world examples that challenged traditional legal and philosophical thinking. Her arguments were not just theoretical, they were backed by extensive research and empirical evidence. Pierce realized he had completely misjudged the woman standing in his courtroom. What he had seen as a simple traffic violation case now seemed embarrassingly superficial compared to her substantial academic contributions. Her research explored how minor interactions, like traffic stops or court proceedings, could reveal deeper systemic inequalities. Each paragraph challenged Pierce's long-held professional assumptions, making him question his own approach to judicial decision-making. He read about how institutional procedures, while appearing neutral, often contained inherent biases that disadvantaged certain social groups. Elizabeth's work wasn't just academic speculation. It was a carefully constructed critique of real-world power structures. As he continued reading, Pierce felt a growing sense of professional humility. Here was a scholar who had dedicated her life to understanding the nuanced ways institutions shape human experiences, and he had reduced her to a simple traffic violation. The paper went beyond legal theory. It was a compassionate exploration of human interaction, examining how small moments of judgment could either perpetuate systemic inequalities or become opportunities for genuine understanding. Pierce began taking notes, his initial skepticism replaced by genuine intellectual curiosity. He highlighted key passages, recognizing the profound wisdom in Elizabeth's analysis. Her work wasn't just an academic exercise, it was a call for institutional self-reflection. He thought back to their brief encounter in the courtroom. How many times had he processed cases without truly seeing the individuals before him? How many stories remained untold? How many perspectives unexplored? Elizabeth's research suggested that true justice required more than following procedural guidelines. It demanded empathy, context, and a willingness to challenge one's own preconceived notions. As the afternoon light gradually dimmed, Pierce remained absorbed in the document. The stack of traditional legal texts lay forgotten, overshadowed by this remarkable piece of scholarship. He realized he needed, to understand more about Elizabeth Hartwell. Her work had challenged him intellectually in a way few academic publications ever had. A plan began forming in his mind. He would reach out, not as a judge, but as a fellow academic interested in genuine dialogue. This wasn't about apologizing for the fine, but about creating an opportunity for meaningful exchange. The traffic violation that had seemed so important a week ago now felt trivial. Something much more significant was emerging, a potential bridge between two professionals from different backgrounds, united by their commitment to understanding complex social dynamics. As night fell, Pierce continued reading, his perspective slowly but fundamentally shifting.
One research paper had done what years of professional training had not. It had truly made him see. The unexpected research had become a transformative moment, promising to challenge not just his professional approach, but his entire understanding
of justice, perception, and human interaction. The university's philosophy department bustled with academic energy, professors and students moving between lecture halls and research offices. Elizabeth Hartwell's small office overlooked a quiet courtyard, filled with carefully organized research materials and philosophical texts. On a typical Wednesday morning, she checked her university email, expecting routine communications about upcoming conferences or research grants. Instead, an unexpected message caught her attention. The sender was William Pierce, the same judge who had fined her weeks earlier. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, curiosity mixing with a hint of skepticism. The email was professionally written, requesting a meeting to discuss her recent research on systemic bias in institutional decision-making. Pierce explained that he was preparing a lecture series on legal ethics and found her work particularly compelling. Elizabeth read the message twice. Her academic training had taught her to approach unexpected opportunities with careful consideration. This wasn't a simple apology or a casual invitation. It seemed genuinely intellectual in nature. She remembered their brief encounter in the courtroom. At the time, he had been just another bureaucratic figure, processing cases with mechanical efficiency. Now something had changed. His email suggested a depth she hadn't initially perceived. Her colleagues would be surprised. Many had experienced similar moments of institutional dismissal, where their professional achievements were overshadowed by superficial interactions. Elizabeth had documented these experiences in her research, and now she was living another example. After careful deliberation, she decided to respond. Her reply was measured, professional, and open. She suggested a meeting at the university's research center, a neutral space where academic dialogue could flourish. Pierce's response came quickly. He proposed a specific date and time, demonstrating a level of enthusiasm that surprised Elizabeth. This wasn't a mandatory meeting or a formal procedural interaction. It felt like a genuine intellectual exchange. The day of their meeting arrived with unexpected anticipation. Elizabeth dressed in her standard professional attire, a crisp blazer, tailored trousers, and sensible shoes that spoke of her no-nonsense academic approach. Her leather messenger bag carried recent research documents, ready to support any discussion. The university's research center was a modern building, with open spaces designed to encourage academic collaboration. Large windows allowed natural light to flood the meeting rooms, creating an environment that felt both professional and welcoming. Pierce arrived precisely on time, carrying a notebook and copies of her published research. His demeanor was different from their courtroom encounter, less authoritative, more curious. He moved with the careful steps of someone genuinely interested in learning. Their conversation began cautiously, circling around academic concepts and research methodologies. But gradually, it deepened. Pierce asked thoughtful questions about her work, revealing a level of intellectual engagement Elizabeth hadn't expected from a municipal court judge. They discussed systemic biases, exploring how institutional procedures often perpetuate unintentional discrimination. Elizabeth shared examples from her research, while Pierce offered perspectives from his judicial experience. It was a dialogue, not a lecture. Hours passed unexpectedly. What was meant to be a brief meeting transformed into an extensive academic discussion. They discovered shared intellectual interests, challenging each other's perspectives with respect and genuine curiosity. As the afternoon light began to fade, both realized something significant had occurred. This wasn't just a meeting between a judge and a philosopher. It was a moment of genuine human connection, transcending professional boundaries. Pierce's initial courtroom judgment had been superficial. Now he was experiencing the depth of Elizabeth's intellectual world, a world far more complex and nuanced than a simple traffic violation could represent. Elizabeth saw an opportunity for broader understanding. This meeting could become more than a personal interaction. It could represent a small but meaningful step towards institutional change. As they prepared to part ways, both knew something had shifted. An unexpected invitation had opened a door to mutual understanding, challenging their previous perceptions and promising a broader, more empathetic dialogue. The university conference room felt charged with an unusual energy. Elizabeth Hartwell, and William Pierce sat across from each other, the space between them gradually dissolving as their conversation deepened. Sunlight streamed through large windows, casting soft shadows on the polished wooden table. Research papers, academic journals, and notebooks created a landscape of intellectual exploration. This was no ordinary meeting. It was a journey of mutual understanding. Elizabeth began by sharing her experiences navigating academic and institutional spaces. Her stories were not complaints, but carefully observed narratives about systemic challenges. She spoke about moments when her professional achievements were overlooked, when her expertise was questioned simply because of her background. Pierce listened intently. His years of judicial experience had taught him to observe, but today he was truly hearing. Each word from Elizabeth challenged his previous assumptions, revealing a complex world he had never fully understood. She described subtle microaggressions, those tiny, almost invisible moments of discrimination that most people might dismiss. A raised eyebrow during a conference presentation, a slightly dismissive tone in professional communications, small interactions that, when accumulated, created significant emotional and professional barriers. William realized he had been part of such systems. His courtroom wasn't just a place of legal procedure. It was an environment where unconscious biases could easily operate. The traffic violation now seemed like a metaphor for larger systemic issues. Their conversation moved beyond personal experiences. They discussed broader societal structures, examining how institutions perpetuate unintentional discrimination. Elizabeth's philosophical approach combined with Pierce's legal perspective created a unique analytical lens. "It's not about blame," Elizabeth explained, her voice calm and measured. "It's about understanding. Every institutional interaction is an opportunity for genuine human connection." Pierce nodded, recognizing the profound wisdom in her statement. His years of judicial work had often been about following procedures. Now he was learning about following human stories. They discussed practical strategies for institutional change. How could legal and academic systems become more inclusive? What small modifications could create significant improvements? Their dialogue was constructive, focused on solutions rather than criticism. Elizabeth shared research showing how diverse perspectives improve institutional decision-making. Pierce began to see his courtroom not just as a place of legal judgment, but as a potential space for genuine understanding. Their meeting lasted hours, but time seemed to dissolve. They were no longer a judge and a philosopher, but two professionals committed to understanding human complexity. Personal stories emerged. Pierce spoke about his own journey in the legal system, moments when he had questioned institutional procedures. Elizabeth shared academic challenges that had shaped her philosophical perspective. Each story built bridges of understanding. They discovered shared values, a commitment to justice, a belief in human potential, a desire to create meaningful change. The conference room, once a formal space, now felt like a sanctuary of intellectual and emotional exploration. Barriers were falling, not through confrontation but through genuine dialogue. As afternoon light transformed into early evening, they realized something profound had occurred. This wasn't just an academic meeting. It was a human connection that challenged existing institutional narratives. Pierce's perspective on judicial procedure was expanding. Elizabeth's philosophical approach was gaining a practical legal dimension. They were creating something new, a collaborative understanding that transcended traditional professional boundaries. Their conversation represented more than personal growth. It was a microcosm of potential societal transformation, showing how genuine listening could break down seemingly insurmountable barriers. When they finally concluded their meeting, something had fundamentally changed. The traffic violation that had initially brought them together now seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by a much more significant human connection. Elizabeth packed her research materials, her movements deliberate and thoughtful. Pierce organized his notes, seeing them through a new lens of understanding. They had entered the room as strangers divided by institutional roles. They were leaving as colleagues united by a shared commitment to human dignity. The university hallway echoed with their footsteps, a quiet soundtrack to a remarkable journey of breaking barriers, one conversation at a time. Months passed, and the unlikely friendship between Elizabeth Hartwell and William Pierce continued to grow. What had started as a chance encounter in a municipal courtroom had transformed into a powerful collaboration that would change both their professional and personal lives. The university lecture hall was packed with students, legal professionals, and academic researchers. William stood at the podium introducing Elizabeth as a guest speaker. His introduction was different from how he might have spoken months earlier, now filled with genuine respect and admiration. Professor Hartwell's work, he explained, has fundamentally reshaped my understanding of institutional justice. Elizabeth's lecture explored systemic biases in legal and educational systems. Her words were powerful, not because they accused, but because they offered hope and practical solutions. Students leaned forward, captivated by her insights. Behind the scenes, William had become an unexpected advocate. He began implementing changes in his courtroom, encouraging fellow judges to look beyond procedural formalities. He spoke about the importance of understanding individual stories, of seeing people as complex human beings rather than simple case files. The traffic violation fine Elizabeth had received was quietly returned, but it represented more than just monetary reimbursement. It was a symbolic gesture of transformation, of acknowledging past limitations and moving towards genuine understanding. Their collaboration extended beyond individual lectures. They co-authored academic papers, bridging the gap between legal studies and philosophical research. Their work began to attract attention from institutional leaders, policymakers, and academic institutions. Universities started inviting them to speak together. Their presentations were unique, not traditional academic talks, but powerful conversations that demonstrated how genuine dialogue could break down institutional barriers. Elizabeth continued her philosophical research, now, with added practical insights from judicial perspectives. William refined his approach to legal decision-making, incorporating more empathetic and nuanced understanding. Their story spread quietly through professional networks. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation, but a subtle, powerful demonstration of how individual connections could create meaningful change. Local media picked up their story. A municipal court judge and a philosophy professor, brought together by a simple traffic violation, now working to transform institutional understanding. It was a narrative of hope, of unexpected connections. Students began approaching them after lectures, inspired by their collaborative approach. Young legal professionals and researchers saw a new model of professional interaction, one based on mutual respect and genuine listening. William's colleagues in the judicial system started asking questions. How could they implement more empathetic approaches? How could they see beyond procedural restrictions to understand individual human experiences? Elizabeth's academic colleagues recognized the profound impact of their collaboration. It wasn't just theoretical research. It was practical, transformative work that could create real societal change. The fine that had once seemed like a barrier now felt like a distant memory. It had become the unexpected catalyst for a much larger journey of understanding. Their relationship transcended professional boundaries. They had become friends, united by a shared commitment to challenging existing institutional narratives and creating more inclusive spaces. During one of their collaborative lectures, a young student asked how their unexpected connection began. William smiled, looking at Elizabeth. "Sometimes," he said, "the most significant moments of understanding start with the smallest interactions." Elizabeth nodded, understanding the profound truth in his statement. Their journey was proof that genuine human connection could overcome systemic barriers, one conversation at a time. As they continued their work, their story became a beacon of hope. It demonstrated that change is possible when people approach each other with curiosity, respect, and a willingness to listen. The traffic violation that had brought them together now seemed like a gift, an unexpected opportunity for growth, understanding, and transformation. Their collaboration proved a simple but powerful truth. Real change happens not through grand gestures, but through genuine human connections that challenge existing perspectives and open new possibilities for understanding.